Hey, I'm Ton Vin, and this is Seattle Eats, a food podcast from the Seattle Times and KUOW. Our dining scene is always in flux, with a flurry of openings and closing every head-spinning month. I've been following some big moves in the brewery scene. 2 local brewers are expanding with tasting rooms this spring. These tasting rooms are becoming third places, unlike any other. But before we get to that, we'll tell you the dramatic story of a high-end sushi restaurant that closed its doors. The story has twists and turns and ends with a lesson for all of us who like to eat out. That's all coming up with my editor, Trevor Lenzmeier. Let's get to it. Hey, Seattle Eaters! Trevor Lenzmeier is in the building. He's a feature editor at the Seattle Times, which means he's my boss, so I gotta be on my best behavior.
That's right.
Hey, Trevor.
Hey, Ton. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Well, Trevor, as you know, I've been chasing this really interesting story recently. It's about beer tasting rooms with some great food. But before we get to that, we gotta talk about the big story that you broke.
Uh-oh.
This story revolves around Chef Philip Franklin Lee. For those who don't follow the who's who's in the chef scene, he's a big deal. He competed on Top Chef, and his acclaimed restaurant, Sushi by Scratch in California, earned a coveted Michelin star 4 years ago. He expanded with another Sushi by Scratch in Seattle in 2022. This is a high-end sushi place. It seats only 10. They only serve omakase, which is a tasting menu created by the chef. Sushi by Scratch charges $185 a head. And it's a go-to for California transplants and foodies with a lot of disposable income. But the restaurant shut down last month, and not for the reason you would think. So Trevor, tell us the whole wild story. I still can't believe it.
In 22, as you mentioned, Sushi by Scratch comes to Seattle. As you said, Philip Franklin Lee already has a Michelin star at that point from California. It's the 6th location of his chain at that point. Fast forward a few years, there's a dozen locations of Sushi by Scratch, and this is a $185 a pop omakase experience in Seattle. Again, 2022, that fall, they open. In January 2025, for the purposes of the health department, is the first time that the county knows that they exist.
That's a big gap.
A little bit of a gap, right.
So you're telling me they've been operating under the radar of the health department pretty much?
Again, to the health department's understanding, and they have told us this, they were not aware that this place existed until January 2025. So clearly they do not read the Seattle Times because we covered it in 2022 when they opened.
And how did they figure this out, Trevor?
Through a tip from the public, which is actually how the health department gets a lot of their tips.
So tell me what happened when the health department confronted the chef.
Philip Franklin Lee's understanding is that when he came into ownership of this space in 2022, it was already permitted. According to him, he was approached by a business owner who was going to get out of Seattle. They had a place that was initially a boba tea cafe that was going to be converted into a sushi restaurant. Allegedly, there were already permits sorted. It was good to go. The health department says that is simply not the case. Not only was there not an approved, signed, sealed, delivered permit for a sushi place, there was not an approved permit for the boba place. In January, and this is according to both parties, the health department shows up based off of this public tip that Sushi by Scratch is operating without a permit. Because Philip Franklin Lee, the operator of the restaurant, said that he had plans to come within compliance, sort the permit issue, they said, okay, we're not going to issue one of these public closure notices today. So on this January visit, both parties are aware that he does not have a permit, but they agree that because he is going to get everything sorted, they will not issue this database notification that anybody can find on kingcounty.gov.
That's quite a mulligan. That is quite a break that he got.
You said it, not me, but yes, gets a, hey, we know that this is happening, but because you have showed good faith as the operator to get into compliance, we'll let you go. So between January and March 5th, what happens? Business as usual. They keep opening. They keep charging people. They keep having seatings. It is just a standard operating procedure.
It's crazy that he kept serving customers. because the health department said, hey, we'll give you a pass. We won't fine you for operating without a permit for 2 years. That was very generous of them. But that does not give you permission to keep running your restaurant without permits. So what happened when the health inspector showed up again?
They shut him down or issued this public closure notice on March 5. But it's not like they bar the doors. They post a notice and say that this place has been closed by the health department. They come back again, and people are still dining there. And according to Philip, they move, effectively, the notice they had posted outside, move it into the building, and explain that if people continue eating here, if you continue operating, we will return and tell folks face-to-face that you are not permitted. That leads to our story. They eventually do shut down. They go on a 3-week or so hiatus.
Wow. We're talking about these permits a lot. Because the permits say, hey, this restaurant is up to health code. They're following all the rules correctly. The health department never did that check at Sushi by Scratch. And when they did show up, they saw problems that concerned them. And when you're talking about sushi and raw fish, that gets dicey pretty fast. So what concerns did the health department have?
The big thing is they had no idea how they handled seafood, and that's where the permit comes in the first place. So they've never done a health inspection. They don't know that they have the proper sinks, the proper refrigeration. So the health department says in March upon the initial report that a restaurant serving raw sushi requires extensive refrigeration and freezer space and multiple prep sinks to prevent cross-contamination, which the Sushi by Scratch kitchen lacked. Franklin Lee has said vehemently the entire time that's not the case. The health department retracted the bit about the proper refrigeration, but he did have to install a hand washing sink. He had to clarify to the health department that he was not using another sink to wash both produce and meat or to prep meat and produce. So again, there are several of these health issues that he says, oh, well, I wasn't violating them. How is the health department to know?
Wow. So take us up to speed, Trevor. He got shut down. Where are we at now?
So they went on this weeks-long hiatus, and in order to reopen with this permit, which they were granted in the first week of April, and they reopened on that first Friday, April 4th, they had to come into compliance with the following issues. This is straight from the health department. It was the installation of a dedicated hand-washing sink. They already had hand-washing sinks, but an additional one. The resolution of a wastewater issue. The designation of a dedicated food preparation sink for raw meat, the discontinued use of a vacuum sealer and dehydrator, and a corrected drain pipe on an ice machine. And even still, the health department and Lee can't quite agree that these are exactly as they seem. Because Lee has told us that the designation of a dedicated food preparation sink for raw meat is him saying, well, of course, I did not prep meat and produce in the same sink at the same time. That's just common sense. Common sense isn't good enough for the health department in this situation. They need a permit. They need to have approved that you are going to do so.
And do we have that right now?
Yes, right now it is a fully operating restaurant. It has been approved by the health department. And again, they've retracted the bit about improper refrigeration. Philip Franklin Lee insists that he did not have these food safety issues at his restaurant, but there was no way for the health department to know that. And what they cited him for was for not having that permit.
So, Trevor, what am I hearing from you is this restaurant was pretty much operating illegally for a couple of years. And if it weren't for a whistleblower or a customer who reported them, it would have kept on operating. Am I correct?
I mean, in theory, yes. They, again, only knew about Sushi by Scratch operating because somebody from the public told them about it.
Yeah. So customers really are powerful here. You and me, when we're eating out, we got to be aware of what's happening. So what should people look for to make sure they're eating somewhere up to code?
I mean, some basic ones, and this is more so in like street vendors, but hand washing stations and bathrooms. That's an essential. And of course, Sushi by Scratch had hand washing stations and bathrooms. A public health permit and sticker. Again, that little smiley face that talks about a food safety score, it's supposed to be publicly displayed in the restaurant. Some sort of a signage that says 2425 or 2526 eventually, food permit.
Yeah. So if it's not a smiley face, I'm taking it that's not good, Trevor?
You definitely want to avoid the frowny face. You can sometimes get away with an okay. Again, it's on a point system, right? So if they were to have come into Sushi by Scratch, maybe they would have lost just a point for that drain pipe issue and a point for not doing this or that. But again, was never on the point system. So you want to look for a place that has a permit, of course, and doesn't have too many demerits, because you do not know what those demerits are for.
Okay, time for a quick break. And when we come back, we're talking about a big trend for breweries and beer tasting rooms in the city. I'll tell you about 2 new spots opening soon. Stick around.
Ton, I'm tired of talking. I'm going to make you do it this time. Tell me about these 2 openings that you're excited about.
Trevor, it amazes me how many response and emails I've gotten over these 2 openings. So the city of Seattle is getting 2 big name breweries that's going to expand. The first one is Aslan Brewing. They're based in Bellingham. They expanded to Fremont about 5 years ago, but now they're expanding with an even more ambitious project. It's going to be in Tangletown, east of Green Lake. They have partnered with Ethan Stowell to do a seafood menu and an oyster bar. It's scheduled to open in May.
And you said Tangletown? Can you is that a micro neighborhood? What's Tangletown?
Oh, you had to go there. You had to go there. This is very controversial because people refuse to accept Tangletown as a neighborhood. But it does exist, people.
Some call it Meridian, and for all the geography stands out there, it's technically southeast of the lake itself. Don't grill my man Ton on that. He's been accused by Seattle Times commenters of stirring geographical drama. But Tangletown is a real place, we promise.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that. Thank you for clarifying that, Trevor. So that's Aslan Tangletown. That's opening sometime in May. And the second big opening is, I'm sure you know about this, and that's Ruben's Brewing. So Ruben is a big deal in Ballard. I would say they're one of the top craft breweries in our city. And they're opening a 3rd location, and it will be in downtown near Pike Place Market.
You said Harbor Steps, right?
Yes, around the Harbor Steps.
Cool.
And they're trying to open before the summer tourism cruise ship rush.
And give me an idea of space, like a big place or?
Oh, we're talking about 200 people.
Wow.
And we're talking in both cases. It is family friendly. Dogs will be allowed in their patios. Both spots will have patios.
Yeah.
And it's funny, isn't it, Trevor? Because when you think of a place that sells beers to adults, it's actually a great place in terms of family atmosphere. And I think that's because they fill a void, Trevor.
Yeah.
They're becoming this new 3rd place, that place between work and home where people gather and just to hang out.
So you're saying the Ballard Brewery bubble has not yet burst?
Oh, not even close. That's either going to make some people very angry or very happy.
Well, for me, it's like I don't think of anything other than that when I think of Seattle. First place that I ever went was that Ruben's in Ballard, kind of like right off the old tracks. So, I mean, it's a big win, right? It's a big 3rd place where anybody can go, where you can have a birthday party, you can have an impromptu, whatever. You don't have to drink a beer. And they've got NA options too, right?
Yeah. This is ironic to me because if you compare brewery tasting room menus to dive bars and restaurants, tasting rooms offer more non-alcoholic beer and mocktails and other non-alcoholic options. When I walk into a brewery, Trevor, I see treats for dogs. I see booster seats for kids. I often see soccer teams or softball teams that get together after the big game. I see kids' birthday parties. And it's probably the only venue, Trevor, where you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can sit there and nurse a beer under $10.
Totally.
If you were at my bar and you sat there for 2 hours nursing a Rainier, I will kick you out. I'm sorry.
Well, Ton, I would have 3 Rainiers. Thank you very much.
There you go. See, now I can pay my rent. Now the bartenders can pay
Well,
their
exactly. Like you go to the Big Stoop space, the former Optimism space on Capitol Hill by me, you can bring a birthday cake in there. You can get the food truck from right outside. You can bring food in. You can play trivia. Shout out Seattle Times journalist Paige Cornwell. She hosts trivia there. You can have, again, one beer over the course of hours, sit out by the campfires and just hang out.
Right, and you can't do that at a restaurant
anywhere else.
or at a bar. And I'm so glad you mentioned Stoops, because my epiphany is like a couple of years ago, I saw these two parents sitting at Stoops nursing a beer while they watched the kids play. And you know what that looks like to me? It looks exactly like a scene from a park where you have two parents just sitting at a park bench sipping a tall latte while they watch the kids playing at the playground or the slide. Same thing. It's the same vibe. The only difference is they're holding a pint of beer instead of a tall latte. And that just tells me, wow, this is truly a third place vibe.
And that people are stressed. They're drinking beers instead of lattes with their kids. But yeah, totally. So that would have been the Stoop back in Ballard, right?
Yes. And to me, I would say brewery tasting rooms have replaced coffee houses as the new third place. For instance, Holy Mountain, which is pretty much the standard beer in terms of great beer, they have always been adamant that we will always be a 21 and over establishment because, quote, we are an adult environment.
Yeah.
Well, guess what, Trevor? When they expanded to Phinney Ridge in the summer of 23, I walked by and there were high chairs for kids. There were booster seats for kids. There were menu with the word, quote, kiddo-friendly treats, unquote, because they're good at reading the room. They realize we're expanding to Phinney Ridge, and Phinney Ridge is a family neighborhood.
Yeah, sure.
They don't need another bar there. They need another third place. Yeah. And that's what Holy Mountain did. And to me, this was in a lot of ways a game changer.
Yeah.
Because Holy Mountain is a trendsetter.
Yeah.
They're what I would call a thermostat and not a thermometer. They set the temperature in the room. They don't just gauge it. The Ballard Brewery District, I would say, has more third places than anywhere else in the city, within a 5-block radius. You have Barrel Breaker, you have Stoops, you have Ruben's, you have Urban Family Brewing, you have Old Stove Brewing and Garden. It's not just the Ballard Brewery District. We have other pockets around our community with a lot of these third places. Take Georgetown, for instance.
Totally.
Georgetown Brewing and Jellyfish.
Totally.
All third places. So I think you're going to see a lot more tasting room do this.
And it's not just dogs, obviously, at the breweries, nor kids. They're keeping people there with some good food, right? What's the deal?
You know, Trevor, we've talked a lot about this topic on the food team, about how much food costs, how expensive it is to do business here. Well, one way to get around all the red tape is for breweries to sublease to a chef to do pop-ups or to have a food truck parked out front. And the way things are now, Trevor, I would say the most exciting food scene are taking place whether in front of a brewery or inside the brewery. Right now, the hottest restaurant in North Seattle is Mexican Seoul, and they're parked in front of Project 9 Brewing. Midnite Ramen, one of the best ramen in the city, is located inside the new Figurehead Brewing in Wallingford. And in fact, it's so popular that Midnite Ramen is opening a second ramen counter inside Figurehead Brewing called Nanking Ramen. And I should mention there's one more. It's a big one coming up, and that's Holy Mountain Phinney. And they have signed up a cook from Spinazze, one of the best Italian restaurants in the city, and he will be doing fresh pasta in Holy Mountain. And I can go on and on. In fact, you can't even mention some of the best restaurants in the city without mentioning a tasting room or three. That's just the new reality. What's your favorite spot to hang out in your hood? Email me with your favorite third place. You can find our email in the description of this episode. Well, Trevor, now I need a beer.
I don't know how that's supposed to make me feel.
Well, Trevor, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
That's it for today. We have a list of all the spots we talked about in the description of this episode. Thanks for listening to See How He Eats. The show is a production of Seattle Times and KUOW, part of the NPR network. You can support Seattle Eats by investing in the local newsroom and the specialized beats that make this sort of storytelling possible. Please consider joining and subscribing at KUOW.org/eats and SeattleTimes.com. Seattle Eats is produced by Claire McGrain and edited by Jim Gates and Trevor Lenzmeier. I'm Ton Vin. See you next week, Seattle!